Okay, so if you've come with me this far, you know that I am on a mission to really hyper leap into the next phase of growing the dominant majority of the calories that my family eats in the vegetable garden. And you know that I'm going to take the things that I'm learning and I'm going to talk with you about it, and we're going to do this together. And today is the start of the second part of the phase of getting ready to really make this vision and passion of mine a reality. So if you've been with me this far, you know that making this a passion that comes from a space of abundance is really important for me. And you probably also know that I've done a pretty thorough list of everything in the vegetable world that my family eats, how much we eat of it. And then I broke it down and just did the XYZ math and said, this is how much this plant produces, and this is how much I need to plant for me to grow enough for the food that my family eats. If you haven't seen the first video, I highly recommend you step back in time a little bit, go check out what I'm talking about of making a plan on paper and really getting an idea of the amount of food that your family goes through if you are also looking to really expand your self-sufficient garden. But since we already did that, today we're talking more about the actual space of the garden. The purpose of today's video is to walk you through the next phase of planning for me that I am doing to make a long-term investment into my family's self-sustainability. And the idea is that you could use this information to either plan and start a new garden if you haven't before, but also you could also go through and look at your own space and be able to use creative solutions and maybe identify bottlenecks in the process of your growing experience that you hadn't noticed before. So I'm going to go through 4 phases of the garden plan after I have identified how much food my family eats of each particular item, and after I've identified the 5 foods that I am intending to grow for my family self-sufficiency in the next year. Just for FYI, for my family, for the next year, my ideal self-sufficient foods are onions, garlic, carrots, tomatoes, and peppers. Let's take a look at the garden real quick, and I'm going to talk you through what I am doing in these next 4 steps to create a more self-sufficient life. The first phase of planning out the self-sufficient garden that I found to be the most time-consuming and the most valuable is observing. I've said this several different times, many different ways, but the process of observing the land that you have is the most essential thing that you can do to co-create with the space that you are stewarding. July 1st was our 1-year anniversary of closing on this property, and aside from celebrating, I also realized that that means that I have spent 365 days coming out to this specific space that we are sitting in right now, and I have watched where the sun is in the sky. I have learned a lot about relative humidity and temperature fluctuations in this area since I'm new to this area. And I have also learned about the pest pressures of the space. I'll show you a couple things here in the garden that's happening right now that is part of my observation process, in hopes that it will help you in your own observations as far as maybe what to keep in mind when you are in this phase of the experiment. The number one thing to take into consideration when you are laying out your garden or modifying your garden to grow more food is the patterns of the sun in every time of year. It is 4:30 in the afternoon currently where I live in the middle of summer. And this is the point in the day where the part of the garden that I have that gets the most morning sun starts to see shade from the trees that are behind me. I live in a pretty densely forested area, and tree shade and tree cover is very prominent here. So when I'm taking time to observe the sunlight patterns of the area, I'm thinking about where is getting sun the longest points of the day, and where am I going to arrange my planters, my pots, whatever you're growing in, your rows, however you choose to do it. Where am I going to put that so that the things that need the most sun, like peppers, are maximizing on that time? Whereas where are the things that need less sun, maybe like lettuce or herbs, they can kind of mitigate it. Looking at the hours of the day that the sun is hitting your space is probably the most important thing that you can do. And looking at the difference between summer and winter when the sun is in the southern sky. This garden changes completely in the wintertime, and there is literally a single row that I currently have planted that sees the sun in the winter. Everything else is quite literally shaded for 4 months a year. So that is something that's super important to consider, because if you don't have sun, your plants aren't growing. And if you want to have a year-round garden and produce food for your family, you need to figure out how to have sun year-round. Okay? Cool. If you look right here, hopefully you can see this plant right here, this little baby, was a shishito pepper. And this plant was a green bean. To my own dismay, I got a little bit ahead of myself and started taking down some of the temporary fencing that I had put up to combat deer from coming into the garden. And the idea was that I was going to take it down for a minute. I didn't really see a lot of deer pressure before. And so I was just going to take it down for a minute so I could move some pots around and get a better process into the layout of the garden. And I had it down for 24 hours and they were on it. So I very quickly put up the fencing again with a lesson learned, but this is part of the observation process. Learning what you are up against is so essential, because you will get some grand visions after being armed with all the knowledge of all of the other components that we are going to talk about in observation. And then you will not have thought about the fencing or anything like that. And going in after the fact to put up fencing is so hard. So the first thing that you think about is sun. The second thing that you think about is fencing. Because like if you live in a place that gets rain, you don't have to think about water as much, first of all, in the summer, grading in the summer. You don't have to think about water as much, but also like if you take the time to get the water situation set up and get your sunlight angles really nice so that you can grow more in a smaller space, and then you don't think about protecting your plants and they get eaten, you didn't just waste water, you wasted all of that time. So to me, fencing is number 2. Another thing that you want to think about is your water. Being off-grid, we use gravity feeding so that we don't have to run, I don't know, like a generator or anything when we're just trying to water the garden. So our water storage has been an essential part of our process in planting the garden. We chose this area because in most of the day, even in the summertime, this back area behind me is shaded. And that means that this water doesn't get too hot. A lot of times, the role that water is playing outside of giving the plants the hydrogen and oxygen that they need to process and to do photosynthesis, to consume nutrients and convert them into more plant growth and to transfer the energy appropriately into what you're going to be eating. They also use water as a cooling mechanism, just as we do, to hydrate and to be able to not have the soil get so hot that the roots are burning. Water is a beautiful thermoregulator. Hot dog. That's a hot dog. Give her some love in the comments. She's a good pup. So the tech and I got a little too hot to be outside. So it was a good time to almost transition anyway back inside where we can talk about the next phase. But just to recap, there are 3 kind of major components in the garden that we are looking at during the observation process. The location of the sun in the sky in summer and winter, the ability to protect our plants through fencing and whatever other means you are going to use, and the placement of water storage. I would also tack on to that the spacing of your garden in order to effectively install drip line or maneuver through them with ease, so that if you are hand watering, you can still do it without having to spend way too much time watering. So then there's another part of the process of growing a self-sufficient volume of food that I have been exploring more and more lately. And that is the process of knowing the plants that you are trying to grow. Every plant is different, obviously, and depending on what they are producing, changes what they need. There's a lot of diversity in a garden, and the fact that so many different things can grow together in an environment to me is pretty impressive. I have a couple of examples that really helped me see this perspective. I planted potatoes for the first time this year. It was my first time growing potatoes, and I just got them on discount at the store. I had no intention of growing potatoes, but then they were there and I was like, well, okay, whatever. And I didn't do any extra learning about them. I kind of just used the knowledge that I have of a basic way of how to plant and take care of a potato. And I got a harvest. I mean, like, they grew, and for the $1 that I spent, I got several meals, but it wasn't the volume of self-sufficiency. The garlic that I have, on the other hand, is something that I have been working on being more self-sufficient in for several years. So I have a very deep understanding of the nutrient requirements, the spacing requirements, and the soil requirements for the plant. I know how much I need to plant for my fresh consumption, my preservation, and for my seeds for the next year, because you just plant the cloves again. And so this year I planted 70 cloves of garlic. It'll get me through fresh eating, some preserving, and I will prioritize saving about 120 cloves for the following year's planting. And that garlic will grow really well because it's used to the soil that is here. Since I'm very comfortable with the process of garlic, that's something that I have created a self-sufficient structure in, that I can kind of like replicate the process of knowing how that works into the other plants that I intend to be self-sufficient in. So that'll kind of be the next step with the potatoes, the onions, the carrots, and the peppers. I said potatoes, I meant tomatoes. You get the drill. So we've observed. Yeah, we know what's going on in our space. We are there, we are with it, we're connected, it's perfect. Then we know a lot about the plants that we want to grow because we've done our research. Because now is where it gets juicy. Now we are making the garden plan. And this isn't like for a few months. We are making the plan. This is what I've been doing in my free time. I got like, oh, maybe I'll do it this way. Oh no, well, maybe I'll do it this way. Oh no, well, maybe actually I'll do it this way. I've drawn so many plans, and each time I look at them and then I go outside and I kind of do a little bit more consideration about something that I had already observed and about what I know about the plants. And I've combined both of those line items to create a conclusion of, I think this is going to be the most efficient and effective way that this garden will be able to produce not just this year, but for years to come. I've got my kind of game plan here of basic drawn out location of my pots that are going to, which is going to allow for crop rotation. It's going to be a maximized space that I can use vertical growing techniques and trellising to have more room to plant more items, as well as being able to continue the process of having diversity in the space, which is really important to me, and it really helps with pest management in the long run. I know where I'm going to put everything. I know how I'm going to rotate my crops. I know where I'm going to be trellising. And I know between winter and summer where in the garden I'm going to be planting things in order to be able to utilize the sunlight appropriately and have a year-round garden that's consistently feeding my family. So we are on 1, 2, and 3. We've got 3 steps. And this step is not a one-time thing, and you do not need to rush it, because you are creating a space that you are going to be using for years. So you do not want to take 30 seconds to just guess, right? That just doesn't work ever. You gotta like nurture it a little bit, okay? Let it grow. It'll be really nice in the long run, and you'll be really happy you did it. So now I'm on step 4. And step 4 is work the plan. We were out in the garden earlier, and you could probably see that things are a little bit messy. I've got pots dug out, a bunch of stuff's in just little plastic pots, and things are very temporary in that space right now. Because I didn't do all of the steps right away that I have just talked about when I was first establishing this garden, and I have plants growing in there, it's going to take me now longer to revamp the space to be what I want it to be. So that part of this process is definitely more slow going even than making the plan. But it's really joyful. I have a lot of fun digging. I know, crazy. So for me, the next steps of working my plan is to undo a lot of what was already there. I have to take away what the previous owner had created because their goals were different than mine. They were growing 20-foot tall marijuana trees. I'm growing food. So the spacing's different and the sunlight requirements are different, as well as the water. So I'm undoing that. And then before I'm even thinking about laying pots down or anything like that, my partner is going to help me take our skid steer in and grade everything so that the water and drainage is what we want it to be for the soil. Following that, I am going to protect my space from another pest that is cute as a button but not welcome, unfortunately, in my area, gophers. So the gopher wire will go down after we have graded the space, and then I will be topping everything of the gopher wire with cardboard, and this will suppress the native vegetation and allow me to kind of be a little bit more of the creator in this specific area of the land that I'm stewarding, to have the plants that I know are going to create the environment that I'm looking for. After I lay the cardboard down, wood chips go on top. We're going to be creating compost in place where we are. After cardboard and wood chips are laid down, then and only then is when I will be laying out all my pots and filling everything in the location that it will remain for the remainder of the time that I plan to use the garden. And that process will take some time. But I'm grateful to be doing something that I just care a lot about. So to really finish things up here, I think the process here of what I'm talking about is more universal than we give it credit for. The foundation of any scientific method process is observation. And that observation is what allows you to form an hypothesis before you even get started on anything. And once you form a hypothesis, that's when you start doing the research and you start understanding, well, what have other people learned about this? It's really great that we have something that can be applied not just to researching, but also to acting. And I love that I can take the time to observe my space with a goal in mind, and then use what other people have learned to create something that's going to work very specifically for me, very specifically for my environment, and allow me to continue to achieve the goals that I'm looking for. I love that I can use this as practice to then continue on and maybe apply it to other things that I enjoy doing, like building the greenhouse when we get to that point, or finishing out building the outdoor kitchen or the outdoor bathroom, or becoming better at YouTube. Life skills are definitely not just a one path thing, and I hope that this process maybe helps you as well in creating whatever you're looking to create. I look forward to continuing to share with you how it goes and what hiccups come up in the process and how I am able to address them. And then eventually I'm going to show you my year's worth of tomatoes, and it's going to be great. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you for hanging out with me today. And in the meantime, just know that you are greatly appreciated for who you are.